Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I'm here today with my friend Shelley Kaehr. She's a PhD. She's written so many books. Welcome back to High Road to Humanity, Shelley.
Nancy, it's so great to be with you again. I've missed you, and I'm glad to be back on the show. So thanks for having me.
You're welcome. She always has such exciting information, you guys. Okay, so she's got a couple books out. We've lagged a little, but we're going to talk today about one that came out a few months ago, Journey Through the Akashic Records. And, you know, a lot of people don't know what the Akashic Records are. They hear about them. We're going to talk about what they are today. Shelley's going to share some experiences. Before I get in, she's going to talk about her near-death experience and how she discovered the Akashic Records so that you guys can understand that this is real life stuff. If you don't know about Shelley Kaehr, she is a PhD. She's out of Dallas, Texas. She's a world-renowned past life regressionist. Her method of combining energy work with hypnosis has been endorsed by numerous leaders in the field of consciousness, including near-death experience pioneer Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Brian Weiss. Now, Kaehr is prominently featured in the media, including Coast to Coast. She's always on Coast to Coast, AM, and William Shatner's Weird or What? We'll have to ask you about that. You can visit her website at pastlifelady.com. How was that, being on William Shatner's show?
That was wild. I didn't get to meet him, but he was in a studio, but it was kind of cool because he said my name. I mean, that was cool enough as far as I was concerned. That was about a book I did many years ago about curses, about people who believed they were cursed. And so they had an episode on his old show. He has the Unexplained now, but this was on Weird or What, where they were talking about cursed objects and things like that. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, I used to love antiques until I got into spirituality and got into this stuff and realized that they all hold energy of another person or another entity or whatever. And then you think twice about maybe picking that stuff up, right?
Yeah, I think so. It would have to be cleansed and cords cut and stuff like that.
We'll have to watch the show.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. That was back in 2012, so it's been a couple of years ago. But yeah, that was super cool.
Well, I want to talk, the audience, you've been on the show so many times, but it's been a long time since you told your story.
Oh, wow.
So talk about what happened to you. You did have a near-death experience and, you know, tell us how you discovered the Akashic Records.
Yeah, I mean, this is theoretically, I guess, ancient history, but back in 2000, I've briefly mentioned this on the show before, but not in this context that we're talking about now. I was going through a divorce at the time. I was having a lot of strange things going on, as I know viewers and listeners can relate to. You know, you just have certain periods of your life where everything is kind of hitting the proverbial fan. So I was having one of those times, and I started studying a lot of like psychic development things, and I was really quieting myself down, and I began hearing the inner voice telling me that there was something wrong with my heart. I was not going to live much longer. I was like, where is this coming from? And I didn't have an accident or anything, but one night I was in bed, I just felt myself lifting up out of my body. And I wound up in a space where I was like in a semicircle with these beings of light. And it was all very nonverbal, very cerebral. The only person I recognized was my dad's mother, my grandmother, who had died right after I was born. And I'd never, of course, really met her. So I always felt like she was a guardian of mine, but then I knew it because I saw her there and I was like, whoa, what are you doing here? So it was all of this. It's the same thing. If anybody's read Dr. Moody's book, Life After Life, which is one of my favorites, or any of the near-death literature that's out there, there's this nonverbal communication going on. It's not your time. And so I came back into my body and I called a neighbor because my heart really was having a difficulty. So I went to the hospital, they hooked me up to machines, and this went on for the whole night. They kept me overnight. And then they just released me because there was theoretically nothing wrong with me. And they just called it a quote virus. And then I got released. But when I came out of that, I was just very sensitive to sounds. I had a knowing about things that were completely out of my conscious awareness. And one of the things that had happened was I started having a lot of energy just running through the body. And I knew how to lay my hands on things and make things move around. I mean, I was not trained in Reiki. I didn't even know what that was. So then I started on this long journey of learning how to do energy, like what is energy healing? What is all this about? And then during that time, in terms of the Akashic realm, I started realizing that like you and I could be hanging out and maybe you're telling me about going to the grocery store or going out to eat over the weekend. And I would see in my mind, almost like I was a little person on your shoulder. I would be seeing what you were describing. And I would find myself in places and I would come back and go, where the heck did I just go? And why was I, walking in the vegetable aisle with Nancy at the grocery store or whatever? I mean, because it could be something really, really mundane. And then I started to understand that what I was doing very easily and accidentally, let's say, I was dipping into this space that I would consider the Akashic realm.
Interesting. Well, because, we talk about right now going to the fifth dimension, and they say all of this is just a ruse, it's all energy, and we're in this, program almost. I hate to call it like that. It's like hologram. It's like we're in a hologram, but it's like,
Yes.
And I want to ask you this because I'm working on this myself and I talk to the audience about it, but it's almost like once you get to a certain point where you have, like you did, where you could quiet the mind and connect with the divine to a certain point, then that kind of goes away, the hologram. Is that right, Shelley? Or you dipping into, do you know what I mean? Like you're able to jump dimensions. Is that what this is more than anything?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Akashic realm, or when people are talking about the Akashic records, like that's such a buzzword right now, but what they're talking about is what you're talking about. We're transcending. I really believe that there is a web of consciousness that exists that's beyond this illusion that we're currently in. And we can go out there to receive information and guidance and direction on different aspects of our life. And so in this case, yeah, it was almost like, one of my favorite movies is The Matrix.
Right.
I mean, everybody, I hope listeners have seen that series, but the idea that, wait a minute, he's really in a bubble in a cave, but his consciousness is being projected out into the world, but none of it's real. Right. I think, I don't know if, hopefully it's not that drastic, but there's definitely a different realm of consciousness that we're existing in. And so for that period of time when I came out, I just realized that somehow I had gone somewhere that was very different than the three-dimensional reality that we're currently hanging out in right now.
I just have a lot of questions. I interview a lot of people. So I'm kind of, okay.
Yeah, keep going. I want more.
Well, okay, then I have questions.
Anything.
Yes, I have questions for you. Well, here's one of my big questions. Are we supposed to know?
That's really a great question. And it's something I bring up in this book because in the book, I really believe we can open doors and go into different spaces, but yet within that, I think that each individual has a purpose and a reason for being here. And you have certain gifts and talents, and they're different from mine, and they're different from the audience. Every single person has something very unique that they came here to do, that they can do better than anybody else on this planet. And so I put it all out there for people. And yet I really believe like some of those exercises, if you try them, you're not going to get anything. And others, you're going to say, wow, this is easy. And so I think that we spend too much of our lives like going into the places that are difficult rather than trying to unlock the doors of what might be easy. And that's giving us that clue to what our soul purpose is. And so I don't think we can go into all those spaces. We could certainly try. And I've certainly put it out there for people. But one of the big ones that's kind of interesting is this idea of predicting future events, for example. That's a big one, right? Not everybody's going to be the next Nostradamus, for example, but you can certainly try. And I think if it's meant for you, then that happens. And if it's not meant for you, then you'll know that that's not your dominant purpose here.
Yeah, very well said. Because there's things I know that I don't want to know,
Yeah.
but I know, but then I am not really big on tapping into the Akashic Records because I'm not supposed to know. Isn't that interesting? Because, and I'll tell you why I think this, there's a lot of us that have to go through these experiences. And if we tapped in, it would mess up our journey, as you say, our purpose. But then on the flip side, if there is something we're supposed to know, we'll get that download, right?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
what I think, Shelley. I really do. Because it's really weird. Because some things, okay, and you call this, I'm going to move forward a little bit. You call this mind stream, and it's an interconnected nature of all beings and reality itself. And this is, you're calling this interdimensional space. Okay, so we know we have this interdimensional space. We know it's like, it's astral. Some people call it the astral field. When did you first connect, and how did you know it was the Akashic Records? How did you know this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I ever really called it that, because to me, that's kind of more of a buzzword, but I was starting to call it the mind stream. And then I later discovered that this is more of a Buddhist term. And that could be because of some past lives that I've had or something, because I didn't even know what that meant. I just said, this is like a mind stream. It's like my first book on past lives is called Life Stream. And I was talking about the fact that we can get on this, almost this river of time, and we can go access those things in the past, but we can likewise access things in the future. And so I don't know that I consciously realized it's the same place that everyone else is calling this Akashic realm, or this field of all possibilities, stores everything that's happened in the past and all of the possible futures that exist. And so in that, it's that timeless space. It's a place that's bigger than anything that we can wrap our minds around. And so when we're talking about the records, we're talking about the bits of information that we can gather out of that within this unified field. We could call it the field. I mean, people have called it that. I would call it, if I was going to call this book something, I would call it the mind stream, but then nobody would know what I was talking about. So I think calling it Akashic Records and getting our mind wrapped around that helps more people understand what we're really talking about. But it's all the same thing. You can call it whatever you want. It's that realm of unlimitedness.
Yeah, it's energy. It's the energetic, I call it the energetic field.
Yes, I like to call it the cosmic soup because that makes me laugh. But yes.
I want to rewind, and I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to, something you said hit home with me, and I wanted people to catch this. So we have choices. And so one of the reasons why you don't always know the future, or the future is not written yet, you see, because you haven't written it. And there are different pathways we could take. You can go this way, or you could go this way. So it's really down to that choice. So you mentioned that there are different timelines, and we have different selves. So maybe one self went that way and one self went this way, and we're experiencing duality. Do you know what I mean? Right?
Absolutely. In the early 2000s, I think it came out in 2005, I had a book called Beyond Reality. So in this new book, I'm kind of readdressing some of the things that I was writing about in the earlier 2000s. I wrote a book about clients who I took via hypnosis into alternative realities, into actual parallel universes, where we're going into that concept where the future is uncertain. We have all these different choices. And so if I turn right, that's a totally different decision than if I turn left. And so you start to look at different possibilities and different potential outcomes and things like that. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, the future is still up for grabs. We're making choices hopefully based on our highest good at every minute. And sometimes we are not, I don't think, meant to know what's coming. I think we want to know that, but I think we really don't want to know all that,
Well, and I'll tell you, I just know it from myself, because I'm very psychic, and I can tell you things, and there's things I don't even know that I want. Like I said, I don't really want to know about people unless they ask me. I don't really tap in because I don't think it's appropriate. But the things that I've had psychics, I think I don't know things about myself because I'm not supposed to, or I wouldn't grow and evolve, is what I think. And that's only speaking for myself. So I just want to get that out there. All right, let's talk a little bit.
I agree. I agree. Yes.
That's what I think. I think, you all in good time, like you learn different things in different times. Now, this was so interesting. I thought your book was really interesting. I want you guys to check this out because it was really cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nostradamus, was he tapping into the Akashic Records?
I really do think he was. It's so interesting, Nostradamus. I mean, everybody talks about him, but what was part of his story that I thought was so interesting was that he lived during a time during the Black Death, during the plague, and he was actually a doctor. I don't think, see, people don't really think about that part, but he actually came up with some remedy for the plague, and it was actually somewhat effective. Now, of course, some people thought it was complete quackery, but what was kind of ironic is that unfortunately his entire family died of the plague. And then it was after their death that he really started plugging in to the same place he probably plugged into to get that remedy in the first place. They actually say that he probably saved thousands of people's lives, but not his own family. And so when he was by himself, that's when he plugged in with his little candlelight and he went into that trance-like state and started plugging into futuristic events. And I think it's really interesting. I'm not a huge Nostradamus follower, but we can always take some of his very obscure words and we can apply them to different things that happen. But he's credited now for predicting everything from 9/11 to different aspects of some of the more terrible things that have happened. The idea being that if you do have that gift of prophecy, if you warn people about things, then maybe there's a chance that in that unified field of possibility, maybe something new could happen. And so it's a very interesting topic. I do think he was tapping into this place that we're describing. Absolutely.
Right. I've had John Hogue on the show several times, and he's the expert on Nostradamus. Although when he and I kind of battle back and forth on the interpretation, it's kind of funny. Well, what I want to say really quickly here, as we've discussed this, is in your book, you have all these different exercises. And this is what's really cool. And I told Shelley before we started the show, there's one at the end that I really want to do that I just haven't had a chance to do about the future. Or well, is it not the future, but hooking up with some of these galactics. I just think that would be really cool. But the other thing I want to talk about really quick is in order to do all of these exercises, and I don't want to give your book away, but you give a meditation of how to access. You have people bring in the light, which is what I teach the audience to do every day. And you talk about Nostradamus, lighting the candle and tapping in, and that's what we're doing. So here we go again. Are we tapping into our higher self? Or are we tapping into the records? Or is it all one and the same, Shell?
Wow, that's a good question. I do take people in this book through a very specific process to make sure we're really tapping into just bringing a high frequency light through, creating like a shield around ourselves. And then we're stepping through the door to start opening different doors to finding answers that we want to have answers to. The questions, the big questions. Why am I here? Who are my people? What is my purpose for being, and things like that. And we enlist the help of a loving guide or angel who's going to accompany us on the journey. So the question being, what is this we're tapping into? It's the same thing when people ask me, did I really just go into a past life, or did I make that up? I'm not really here to judge. I don't know. I don't profess to know the mind of God. I feel like we aren't going to have those answers clearly until we ascend out of this physical body.
Yeah.
So is it our higher self? Is it God? Is it both? Is it some aspect of that? There's one thought that, I think everybody's, I feel like you've had it. I'm sure a lot of the viewers have had this, like where you're really down or something really horrible is coming, and then you feel something just kind of comforting you, I've had that different times during my life when I'm going through really hard times, where you just feel something just came and comforted me. I don't know where that came from. And there was a theory that I thought about many years ago that started to really come back into my consciousness. Like, what if that was a future version of yourself who's coming to comfort the current you, or, or it could be an angel, or it could be an ancestor. I mean, we don't really know. we just have to be grateful that someone's comforting us. And I think it's a good point. Is that my higher self? I mean, whatever we want, again, whatever you want to call it, I do believe, however you like to define it, something is guiding us.
Right. I'm teasing.
Something is helping us.
I'm teasing as you say angels, because I know we all have a guardian angel. We just have to acknowledge it. And that's why I said, I know we have one. I know we have one. Well, a lot of people call it the celestial library. I think that's really cool. And when you do go into these, you go have a lot of different meditations in the book, and it's to find out people want to know their soul purpose. A lot of people ask me that question when I do a reading. I'm sure you get that a lot. You are the past life lady, the past life expert, and that's probably what you get a lot of questions. So you answer some of those questions. You say the benefits of being able to tap in to the Akashic records is to find out your soul purpose, and maybe do some present life healing as well. You say it helps with past life, global trends, and then maybe the future. So that's kind of interesting stuff. Now, Shelley, you've done a lot of past life regressions. Has there been one that really stuck out in your mind where they tapped into their Akashic records that you want to share, that you think would be beneficial, or what do you think?
Into their Akashic records.
Yeah, I don't know.
The one that I still think was the most healing, I guess that was kind of more of a physical healing thing. Well,
Okay.
I don't know. The one that I think is my favorite regression of all time, let's just say, was a man who was afraid of the dark. And I don't know if I've told this story on this show before, but it is theoretically still my very favorite, because it shows the profound change that somebody can go through when they tap into a different realm of reality. So there was a grown man, couldn't turn the lights off, came for a regression. There's no conscious reason to have this fear. And so we took him back into a life in the 1700s where he lived in a farmhouse, and he was a little boy, and his parents said, do not go into the cellar. And so what does he do? Of course, he has to go into the cellar. There's a long flight of stairs. He rolls down the stairs and falls to his death. And so I took him, this is kind of getting into some of the things I talk about in this new book about like parallel realities. In this case, okay, we're going to have to reshape reality and give him a different reality to tune into. So I had him go back through the scene again, only this time, of course, they didn't have electricity in this place because it was in the 1700s. So I said, let's light a candle and let's stick it at the top of the staircase. Let's go down into this cellar area. Go ahead and go down there and go ahead and tell me what's going on in there. And he looks around, and quite frankly, I guess it wasn't worth dying over. Probably it wasn't even that exciting. So then he just looked around, came back up the stairs, turned the candle off, blew it out, and then went about his business. So at the end of any session, you don't really know. He said, oh, wow, I feel better. I mean, that's one thing, but the proof of it, or the real healing, has to come in the behavior that comes after the healing occurred. And so I didn't see this guy for a couple of years. I ran into him a couple of years later at another expo that I was at, and he goes, I have to tell you this. I was able to turn the lights off for the first time in my life. And so sometimes this lesson, there's lessons that I try to get out of these sessions. Like, what lessons did you learn? Why did you go through this? I mean, he wasn't following directions. Okay, he was a kid. I mean, we've all kids do this. So it really wasn't that big of a lesson, other than this idea that he finally came around to the fact that he was going to need more than, therapy, to regular talk therapy, to get through something like this, because it really was just a carryover from a past situation. But it's one of the better ones in terms of just seeing somebody really literally just say, I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. I'm finished. I can turn the lights off and go ahead and have a normal life now.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, you say in the book, the only reason to pursue a regression in the first place is to make our current life experience more peaceful.
Yeah, I mean, there's no real reason for it other than that. I mean, even when I got into doing regressions myself, I had a friend pass away in an accident, And this burden of this grief was bothering me for years and years. And so when I went into the regression experience, I realized that I had known this person before. They were always dying, leaving me behind, making me feel very upset. And there was just something about looking at the event from a different perspective that I just said, you know what, I'm done with that. It was similar to what happened to this other gentleman I was describing. You know, you just go, oh, wow. When you can take an event, this is again, quantum physics. I look at the event here, and then I look at it like this, I've changed the event. So you're just looking at things differently so that the current experience that you're having can then become more peaceful. And it's just that quick.
Right. I think that's cool. Now, do you think more and more people are tapping in?
I think they must be, or they're trying to, because this idea of, you know, these Akashic records, you know, this is a very hot topic right now. I think more people are attempting to do it. I think also, as you know, the frequencies around this planet are shifting very dramatically, and we are able to tune in better than we could before. Right. Because of the consciousness shifts that are going on right now. So I think that has to do with it as well.
I want to back up a little bit. There was something you wrote about, and I didn't know this, that Edgar Casey predicted there were 3 sets of Akashic records that could be discovered. One was in the Bahamas, right? One's in the Yucatan, and the other's under the right paw of the Sphinx in Gaza. Is that right? Right. Talk about,
yeah.
You know, I just thought this was fascinating, Shelley. What do we know about this?
Yes, so I've written a couple books for the Edgar Cayce Foundation. So Edgar Cayce was considered the most documented psychic of the 20th century, and he lived in the 1940s. And this was another example. He's got a problem. He's very sickly. They've taken him to doctors. He's not getting better. So finally, somebody took him to a hypnotherapist. And he ended up going so deeply into trance that he couldn't remember what he was talking about, but he started channeling this energy that is called Source. And Source started telling him all kinds of things about people's medical conditions. Like if somebody was really sick, they weren't even expected to live. He would tell them to go do some theoretically crazy stuff. They would do it and they would survive. Right. And then he had a whole series of readings about people and telling them who they were in a past life and what they needed to do to heal the energetic difficulties that they were experiencing in their current life because of things they did in the past. And so during all of this trance-like state, he did a whole series on Egypt that I've written extensively about. But one of the things he said was that this hall of records, and again, I think Cayce really is the reason why the term Akashic Records is so popular today at this moment. He really brought it into the forefront that there's these records. He described it more like a hall, like where we're going to go into this library and we're going to pull out books. And certainly that is one mental construct that we can get into when we're thinking about this. But specifically, he talked about Egypt and Atlantis and Lemuria, which I love, which is a civilization that predates Atlantis. And so he said that if you wanted to know about Atlantis, for example, all the records of what actually went on there and the proof of Atlantis, et cetera, was going to be down in the Sphinx paw. So if we're looking at the Sphinx, let's say I'm a Sphinx and this is my right paw. So down in the desert, underneath that Sphinx paw, he's saying there's a tunnel down there. There's going to be this big library. It's going to be found. You're going to have he was saying physical records of things that we could pull out and we could actually read. And he said that these other collections of similar records would be found in the Yucatan and over in the Bahamas, which is one of the spaces where they do think the lost continent of Atlantis might have sunk there, you know, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, beyond the Strait of Gibraltar out there. So they've been searching and searching and searching. In Bimini, they found that Bimini Road. A lot of people think that that was where Atlantis was. And of course, under the Sphinx, I think they've now proven through ground penetrating radar and things like that, that there's definitely something under there, but the government has not been willing to really have a deep exploration under there. I'm one who does believe that there's something to be found there. Yeah. But even if it isn't, I think through guided imagery, we can go into those records ourselves without physically needing to see them until that happens. Maybe there's going to be some shift of consciousness that's going to need to occur and just governments to let us in.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say remote viewing. A lot of people can remote,
Yes.
to go in and I don't know. I mean, it has to be open though for us to see. That's kind of a scary but yet interesting way to look at it too. Shelley, this is a really cool book because you take people through all these different exercises and meditations so that they can do this themselves. What has been the response on this book?
I think this book is having probably one of the better responses of any of my books from what I'm hearing,
Really?
which makes me feel really good because what this book really is to me, beyond the Akashic Records, is these are the guided journeys that I have taken clients on for over 20 years. And I don't want this stuff just rattling around in my head. These are things that I've never publicly discussed before, because sometimes somebody comes and they say, well, gee, I want to have a past life regression. But as you alluded to earlier in this show, I mean, sometimes you need to do some current life healing before you can do that past life regression. Or there's different questions they have that have, that need more than just a regression, like why am I here, or who is my soul group, and different things like that. Or there needs to be some current life healing with people. And so over the years, my guides have guided me to create a lot of different kinds of processes to help people to, with the goal to get your outcome. Your outcome may not come from a past life regression. Maybe you need something a little bit different. And so I feel good having this out there because, again, it's not doing me any good rattling around in my head. And I really believe that even though I had this weird cerebral celestial near-death experience many years ago, I still really believe that every single person can go into this realm if they open the doors and if they understand that some doors, they're not going to get anything. Others, there's going to be information that's there for you that's based on your unique purpose and your unique talents and your reason why you came to this life in this current lifetime. So I think this is somewhere that's accessible for everybody, not just some elite group of whoever, and so it's just been very, it makes me feel really good that I finally put this out.
It's a good book. Now I want to cover a couple more things before we get out of here today. One is psychic protection. You do address it in the book. And as you talk about going to these other realms, I mean, people need to protect themselves before they start, doing this kind of work. You want to address that a little bit? Because sometimes, I mean, it just goes, I always think of the Ouija board, where people did that and they shouldn't have done that. And because you don't know what you're calling in. And when I tell people to, and the only reason I really am big on it, well, everyone should know, I don't just call in the angels. I call in the angels who are divine and holy. So,
Exactly.
because all angels aren't divine and holy. And so I want to talk about this a little bit because you're opening doors. And so before you open these doors, don't you want to make sure you're good to go? You know what I'm saying? And that you don't talk about that, Shell.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yes. We want to make sure, a lot of people who are interested in these topics that you cover in your fabulous show, are very sensitive to energy, for one thing. So they might be sensitive even walking through the shopping mall, for example. But beyond that, when we're opening doors, we want to become very energetically solid within ourselves, very clear that we're bringing through the highest good. And so that's why the beginning of the book, I start talking to us about connecting with the highest love consciousness in white light. And then we're going to put a golden protective shield around ourselves. We're going to walk through that first doorway and meet with our personal angel or guide who loves us, who's very high frequency, who has our best interest in mind. And we're doing all of these steps very slowly at the beginning of the book before we ever start going anywhere else, so that we start to establish that only that which is of highest good can come through, that the love and the light and the good things are coming through.
Don't start
beyond,
guys. I'm just teasing. Don't start at the back of the book. Start in the beginning.
don't don't cheat, kids. No, if you can, okay, fine. But you're going to want to just go take it slow. We're just going to go through these exercises, and each one of them builds upon the next. And so one of the sections, though, I go into, what if we're super sensitive to energy, like even really, really sensitive, which, I have been like that. And I think you have been too. Anybody who's as psychic as you are, you have to just have exercises. So I share, again, for the first time ever, some of the most helpful exercises that myself, a highly sensitive person, and different clients I've used to help them to be able to function in the world. Because sometimes I think, we're very sensitive. So sometimes you're picking up emotions and stuff that don't even belong to you. This is just in daily waking life. And so,
can I stop a second and
yes,
ask? I want to know about this, because Shelley, you're an expert, and this has been on my mind, and I think the audience would be really interested. Okay, so is it good to get up in the morning and protect yourself but are you protecting yourself to the point where you're closing off your energy? Does that ever happen? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, is there too much that we can do in this regard?
Like, okay, so, a lot of times I would just put white light around myself, but then that wasn't enough. So then I decided I would get into a phone booth because I kind of like that. And I was in a phone booth for a while, but then my energy wasn't reaching. And the reason I'm here is so that my voice and my energy can reach other people to enlighten them. So, but then it's like a catch-22. You have to be careful, because you can take on other people's energy that you don't want to. So what do you think about this? Because it's a whole deal, man.
It's a whole deal. And it's a whole deal for a lot of your listeners and viewers, I'm sure, like it is for everybody. When I first started realizing this was happening, I was in a seminar many years ago where I was getting trained to do hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming and stuff. And I started kind of bawling my head off for no reason. And then I realized it's because you're opening yourself up, you're trying to get healing, but yet you're not taking time to realize that you're actually picking up somebody else's stuff who's across the room from you. And so then you start using different interior imagery to say, okay, I'm imagining others are here. I'm going to cut the cords so that I can start just being in my own energy only. Like, if viewers out there, like if you've walked into a room, you're feeling great, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, I feel horrible, or, oh, wow, I've got a headache, then it's possible somebody in the room there is upset and you're just picking up on their vibes. But like you said, then yes, I know, I hear you, because I've gone that direction too. Then you close yourself off so much. I mean, then your own intuition then struggles, because we are not here to lock ourselves in a cave,
Right.
Although we have been locked in a cave the last few years thanks to the pandemic, but that's another story. Maybe we were, but we're out of the cave now. So we don't want to be so shut off that we're not, fulfilling our purpose and being with each other. And yet we want to just maintain our own energy level. So I think for me personally, it's been a big part of my learning, like what you said, like, you're not going to get all the answers because you're going to have to experience it. What does it feel like when I'm taking on other people's stuff? Or what does it feel like when I'm doing too much? And I think it's probably different for everybody, but it's just something to keep in mind as you go about the day. We want to be open, but not maybe too open.
Yeah, it's almost like a balancing act. You want to protect yourself, but not to the point where you're not living.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's very interesting, because I've heard both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, we're still here to have fun, aren't we? I mean, my gosh, we don't want to be, it's kind of like, there's just been a lot of the frequency of fear going on in the world in general in the last few years, as I know,
Sure.
and, that everybody just this idea that we're going to have to come into our house and be, we've got to start breaking free from that. We're here to have an experience, and we're unlimited beings. We're souls. We cannot be destroyed. We're going on from here to some other place. So we have to let go of the fear, and at the same time realize that we feel better when we can be strong within our own energy so that we can have our own thoughts and ideas and convictions and move forward with those. So it is a lifelong lesson.
It is. And I'll bring up really quick boundaries, because when you feel like someone's stealing your energy and you get that vibe over and over, it's time to cut that person off. And those are things that you just learn as you go, and you start to feel. I've literally felt people taking my energy as I've gotten more intuitive. And has that ever happened to you?
It has, yes, yes.
You're like, what are you doing? I can feel you taking my energy.
Yeah, I've had it happen during lectures in the deep past where I'm talking away, and then all of a sudden I don't have any thoughts, or the thoughts I'm having, I'm like, what happened to what I was just saying? And then I realize, okay, I need to send some light out to the audience or cut cords or whatever. And so I can do that even while I'm giving a lecture if I have to. Hasn't happened in a while though. Again, I think you just get to different points in your life, as you know, where you're learning different lessons. And then once you get that lesson, then check it off. And then of course there's another lesson waiting where that other one had been there. So there's always stuff to learn.
Hey, listen, I want to mention, you're going to be back with us. Past Lives, Ancient Lands, and Other Worlds is a new book. Did this just come out, Shelley?
Ancient Lands is coming out on October 8th.
Okay.
And Journeys Through the Akashic Records came out on July 8th. So,
oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good number, girlfriend. I like,
Yeah.
I like, numerology. Well, this is cool. So you're coming back to talk about this book, and just give us a quick little peek before we get out of here today, so people can tune in for our next show.
Yes. So the Journeys Through the Akashic Records is the journeys that take you depending on your intention. And the Past Lives in Ancient Lands and Other Worlds, we're going to have the intention, which is past lives. And so I'm revealing some of the case histories I've never discussed ever in the past 20 plus years. We're going to go into all the cool places in the ancient world. Of course, Egypt, because I love it. But this will be my first time talking about Mesopotamia, Babylon, Persian Empire. We'll do Greece. We'll do the Minoans. Oh, I love the Minoans. And just a lot of other really freaky stuff in the ancient land. And then we're going to get into some of the things you and I alluded to today, which is the journey for to go into parallel universes, people who went to those places, people who experienced themselves on spaceships or in other planets and stuff like that. And then there's processes again in this book where you readers can figure out, did I live on another planet? Did I live in the Persian Empire? And wherever it is that you want to go, the ancient Americas. Of course, we're going to go into the Celtic, the Druids. Just all kinds of stuff. It was a lot of research to write this one, and some just snippets of a lot of the thousands of case histories that I've collected over the years. So if I can't entertain people in this one, Nancy, then I just don't have anything left to give, because there's something in there for everybody. Do you want to know what happened to the Mayans? Great. We're going to go find out. Do you want to talk to Lemurians? Of course. Yes, we're going to do it.
Oh, wow.
So there'll be something for everyone there, I think.
I'm excited. I'm so excited you're coming back. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. You guys.
Nancy, it's so fun to be with you. Congrats on your wonderful show. I love it.
Thank you. Journeys Through the Akashic Records, Accessing Other Realms of Consciousness for Healing and Transformation. Okay. Llewellyn is her publisher. I should mention that. Shelley, thanks for coming on the show. We're going to see you pretty soon with your new book.
I'll be back. And I will look forward to it.
I look forward to it too. Hey, this is Nancy. You're out. This is High Road to Humanity. You guys, thanks for joining us. We will see you again next time. Everybody take care and God bless.
Please join me next time on the High Road with stories full of love and hope for our future. You can find High Road to Humanity on TogiNet Radio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and now watch the High Road on Binge TV networks. My channel is High Road to Humanity. Have a blessed week, and know by staying on the High Road, you will make it to your destination. For a psychic empath reading, visit my website, NancyYou'reOut.com, to book your date and time with me. I will deliver your messages from the angels, and God bless.